I think we talked on Hell Hath No Fury. What a great film that is! I'm still talking about it. Nina Bergman is a good friend of mine, and boy, she was just terrific in that film.
She was incredible in the movie. Thank you very much. Yes, I think we did. I remember now. Yeah, she gave a pretty phenomenal performance in that. It was really a exciting movie to be a part of.
Yeah, and now in One Ranger, I mean, you love action movies. I know this, but did you love it growing up? I mean, is that something that formed your uh,
Um, Action for action's sake, no. I never watched an action movie because it was an action movie. As a kid, I was obsessed with the different directors, and for a short while with the actors that were in them. I loved the Clint Eastwood pictures until I realized it was Sergio Leone that I loved and Don Siegel, and that when he did pictures with other directors, I wasn't quite so enamored with his work. And so, very early on, I became obsessed with particular directors' work and seeking out what they had done. I grew up free DVD, free streaming, free all of that. So it was magazines, film magazines first, and then film annuals, and I'd buy all the old ones from the 60s and the 50s at flea markets and jumble sales, and I'd obsess on those. And that became my sort of infant film school.
I do know, and I was going to bring up that this film, One Ranger, does remind me a whole lot of a Sergio Leone film. I mean, the way that the cameras are, the focus, everything in it is just spot on.
Thank you very much. I think what happens is when you're a young filmmaker, I don't know. I was obsessed with comic books. 2000 AD, Judge Dredd, the English comic books. What I noticed was certain filmmakers framing Sergio Leone, George Miller, people like that, their framing looked more like a comic book than it did like TV, which I found extraordinarily boring. A wide-angle medium, over the shoulder, long lens, and then back out again, reversing. I felt those, it took me a while to work out what the difference was, why I preferred this, why this was more appealing to the eye, why you were drawn more into this, but you look at any sort of poorly shot three camera TV show, and even as an 8-year-old you could tell something wasn't quite on. So yeah, no, I loved those pictures growing up. I like action, I enjoy it, but it's the basis for drama. When it's used as character development, I love it. If it's a stuntman reel with a bad story that and we all saw those as we were kids, you'd go in and you'd be seduced by this incredible B-movie cover of a guy with a gun and muscles and a pretty girl, and you think, oh, this is going to be wonderful. And you couldn't quite work out why it was terrible, why it didn't satisfy. It had all the elements, it had all the action, and then you realized it was the character, it was the act, it was the performance, it was the way the director strung together the story that then made those action scenes wonderful. In essence, the action scene itself was not what was appealing. It was the build up to it. Something like Bullitt. It's 15 or 20 minutes of wonderful character sketching and incredible
development,
and then you see the car chase, and the car chase is wonderful and talked about for years. But if you analyze the car chase in and of itself, other than the fact you had the lead actor driving in certain portions, it was very standard. Those guys were doing that in a lot of the movies at the time. Not just after Bullitt, but before it too. But that one stood out particularly because of this wonderful story that this wonderful plot that was linked to that, and so it would be unfair to say I've always loved action, because it's not really the action that I've loved. It's the telling of a story. It's the weaving of a story without words, and just images and music and acting, and pulling the audience into that is something that I find really exciting.
And when you have that balance between story, action, acting, and how you use the camera to meld all that together, you've got something, and it becomes magic.
You really hope. But yeah, so with One Ranger, what I did was I tried to reach back into my past a little bit, pictures that I'd really enjoyed, as a young man, as a kid. Things like Coogan's Bluff with Clint Eastwood, where he plays an Arizona Ranger who's forced to go to a very hippie infused San Francisco, or John Wayne as a Chicago cop having to go to London, or McCloud, the TV show McCloud, which I used to watch on my grandfather's knee.
I loved it.
There's something about the mythology of the cowboy, particularly, and we could say the fish out of water story, but I don't really care for fish out of water stories. But there's something about taking a cowboy with, who is this mythic character. He is like Odysseus. He's the Greek mythology. America's version of Greek mythology is what we have to base everything on, and whether we like it or not, our mythic values of what's right and wrong strive from the American West, and we prefer it didn't. And there's many people in today's society in America who wish it didn't, but it does, and it does. It strives from a sense of independence, rebellion, making it on your own, going out, going up against the elements and against the bad guys, and succeeding through wit and guile, and and sheer tenaciousness, and the intestinal fortitude to stick out what others can't. And this is what we love, and this is part of our mythology. And I say our because I'm an adopted American. I'm 30 years here, and I love this country more than anything. And that has always appealed to me. You take this character and you put him into another environment and watch him survive. Watch him, take care of himself and overcome the challenges that you throw at him. So from that degree, it felt very interesting to me. And I like the idea of taking a Texas Ranger who is the embodiment of the Old West and the New World. For me, these guys have to wear a uniform that's based on something that would have been more appropriate in the 1880s. The jeans, the belt, the boots, the shirt, the hat has to be a particular type of Stetson. Even the badge, which is based on a hammered out 5 peso Mexican coin. And that's still the shape of the badge. This, and which, by the way, they also have to buy. They put this outfit together, and yet on top of that, they're one of the foremost law enforcement agencies in the world. They're the people you go to if your law enforcement cannot handle it, cannot step up to it. And interestingly enough, one of their sort of world-renowned skills is cyber tracking. So it's not tracking, following footprints in the desert and looking for burnt-out cigarettes and broken ramps, although they do that very well as well. It's cyber tracking, absolutely state-of-the-art, looking for encrypted codes and breadcrumbs and getting the bad guys that way. They're very much of the 21st century, but they wear a cowboy hat and a gun belt, which I think is awesome. I think there's something, the melding of these various different influences I find dramatic and interesting. So that being said, I pitched Thomas Jane on it. He loved it. He, like me, is enamored by Old West movies. We have a deep respect for directors like Bud Bodeker and Howard Hawks and Raoul Walsh and Ford and those guys, and that's something that we found in common. And he liked the idea of taking this. He wanted to make the Texas Ranger that he played, Alex Tyree, even more idiosyncratic. And the accent is maybe a little bit more old worldly than you would encounter in Dallas or Texas right now. But in many ways, it's not. It's also, we did, when we went out for the Dallas Film Festival, which we opened with this movie, which I was very nervous about. We did talk to a lot of people who talked just like that, and they loved it. It was a real hit with that. It was a full house, and they all stayed. We had to push the next film afterwards because the amount of Q&A that was going on afterwards. It was really exciting playing to a Dallas audience with the picture.
It still boils down to a simple story, and it's such a universal feeling to this film.
Yeah, you want to keep it fairly simple, I think, if you can, less wordy than I am in person. The issue for me was I've made a lot of films about people who are looking for money, looking for gold, looking to get rich quick, looking to revenge someone by killing them because they killed their family or a loved one. And these are all fairly base. It's all fairly, there's no state of grace amongst any of these people. Although I tried to find it. That was my job as a director, to find the state of grace in this toxic task that they've endeavored into. But with what I wanted to do, which was a different thing for me, was to have someone who was simply doing right. He was following the law, and the law said he had to get this bad guy, and so he was going to do that whether it killed him, die, and it almost does, and he's persistent. He's that critter that just never gives up, like in The Searchers, where John Wayne's tracking the Comanche and he says, they're just not used to someone who just does not give up, and that's what I sort of wanted with Thomas, and I thought that was interesting. And he's following the law. He doesn't make any extra money out of catching McBride. There's nothing in it other than he's doing what his job describes. And I thought there was something uniquely interesting about that we don't see much in cinema anymore. It's always a hidden, you can imagine them around the table with the executives and he said, no, we need something bigger we need money. There's something else. There's this goal at the end of it. He's got to kill him No, he wasn't even interested in killing McBride. When it all boiled down to it, all he wanted to do was put the handcuffs on him and arrest him. Then that was his part of the quota. If McBride is released or escapes and he's asked to go after him, that's okay. But all he's interested in doing, and for me, that ending, even when I was shooting it, filming it, he just shoots him in the leg and puts the handcuffs on him. Apologies for the spoilers here. Even as I was shooting it, I was thinking, oh my God, am I cheating the audience? Kurosawa said, you always give the audience their cake, and he went back and shot that final duel in San, where they split the guy open and the blood sprays out. And I thought, am I making the huge, biggest mistake of my sort of creative career by not having him, shoot him and blow his brains out and kill him and get covered in blood? But I decided not to, and I stuck to the script, which was he handcuffs him and they walk away, and on top of that, they even have a little conversation, which is, which I liked. And I after all of this, after this epic hunt that Tyree has gone on, all he does is put handcuffs on the guy and arrests him. And I thought that was brilliant. I think it's rather cool. I don't know if I'll do it again, but on this one, and I liked it. And I liked that he stuck to his guns. That's all it was about. There was nothing that, he'd made a vow to catch the guy when his partner had been killed. But beyond that, it was as long as it falls within the framework of the law,
Yeah, I've known Thomas Jane since The Fog, and he is a national treasure. I mean, he really understands his character. I mean, he does all that research, and it's something that the audience really never sees him doing, but they get that result of him knowing that character.
He works extraordinarily hard. He really, really immerses himself in the character, and he's there. I wasn't used to it because, my experience over almost sort of 25 years of directing pictures, professionally, a lot less than that, but directing and not making money, I count at the beginning of the career. But for that amount of time, I've always been in the actor's trailer in the morning or talking to them the night before, and helping it, getting the backstory, figuring out what's going on. Even if it's just talking about breakfast, you're calming the actor down. And I knocked on Thomas's trailer to do that. He said, "Oh no," it's like very polite, but definitely it's his own process, and he's deep into it, and he doesn't need any of your help in that. He's there, he's in character, he's in character between scenes, and I think he's in character maybe after wrap. I didn't see much of him there, but certainly he was embodiment of this ranger throughout the shoot. And the funny little English crew that we had, which was very low budget, and they all found it very interesting that he was in full Texas mode, even at lunch, even in the car going to and from the set in Northern England. So it was fun for them to see. But he's brilliant. He's phenomenal. Really enjoyed working with him.
And John Malkovich. I mean, wow. I mean, getting that name in this film too, was that a difficult task?
Yeah, extraordinarily difficult. And I've worked with him before. He's just very, very busy. He never ever stops. He loves working. He loves acting. He's good fun. He's amazing. I don't know how he does it, because he's learning these scripts ahead of time. He does it by repetition. So it's not something he does in the morning on set and his trailer. He knows the script before he touches down in the country. It's absolutely mind-boggling. I have so much respect for him, and I love him, and I love what he does with the characters. And I should be so lucky to work with him again. I hope we do a third film together.
Well, and the rest of your cast. I mean, now I forgot her name, but your co-star.
Dominic.
Wow,
that role was very, very important because I've known Thomas Jane a while. It's not that he's intimidating, because that's not fair to Thomas, but he is so committed to what he's doing, the task at hand, and intense, that can, unless you're really confident, that can throw you off around it. Crew members, they're like not quite sure. They should be, but we're dealing with indie movies with young people, and I knew if we had the wrong actor playing opposite him, we'd be in trouble, because she has to hold her own. The character holds her own, and you'd see that in her eyes, and the amount of time we had if I had to keep bolstering her confidence. But let me tell you, Dominique Tipper needs no bolstering. She is one confident, ballsy, physically adept, powerhouse of an actress. She is wonderful and really, really brilliant. And if there's any fairness in this game at all, she'll be a superstar. She'll really, really go. We all know the game is fickle, but truly enjoyed working with her. We gave her challenges on this one, physical challenges, props, dialogue, and just she handled it all with aplomb. I mean, absolutely incredible. And to play opposite him and give him a run for his money as well. To each other, it was Thomas's recommendation. They'd done a TV show called The Expanse together, and he'd had a great time working with her on that. And so I knew she could. I knew she was aware of the challenges she was going to be facing, and she was brilliant.
With the current strike going on and all of that, I think indie films are just going to start showing up everywhere, and people are going to start seeing how great some of these films are.
It's interesting. It's interesting you say that. I just got off a Zoom with Frank Grillo, and he was echoing exactly the same thoughts. He was saying it could be a blessing in disguise. This could be literally the little push that we need. I'm more cynical. You look at something like Oppenheimer, and I happen to know that to do that film for $100 million, the only way he signed on to do that was the guarantee that he had $100 million in publicity and advertising.
Yeah.
And that's the small print when you're a B movie director. You, no matter how good your movie is, no matter how fantastic it is, you're going to get about 50 grand in advertising. You know what I mean? If that, by the way, that's a generous amount from most of these distributors. If they give you 20 grand, 25 grand, you should consider yourself lucky. It's 100 million, Tony. That means he's going to be in the news. There'll be fake Instagram accounts started, there'll be websites started. The length and breadth that 100 million in advertising goes to is beyond our imagination. These are rooms full of people in different countries thinking about how to sneakily push this film into your subconscious, how to get people talking about it. So that is what we're up against when you go up against the studio. You're not going up against the film, you're going up against the machine behind the film. So when people say this could be your opportunity, you as a B movie, oh, by the way, that 100 million is not just spent on promoting the film, it's spent on burying the films that are similar to it in competition.
Exactly.
And when I say bury, I mean terrible reviews on IMDb, on Rotten Tomatoes, which can be bought for $50 a piece, $50 for 100 of them or whatever. And then simply just wiping it out. You try and get any of the major film magazines, for example, you can't do it. They only want Marvel or Star Wars or Indiana Jones. You are simply not going to get into it. And it's not because they choose it, because they're bought and paid for, So this is the unfortunate truth. It isn't the same as it once was. Now, you start making films that are brilliant. You start making indies that absolutely just scare the hell out of the studio.
You can say it.
And because you make indie films that big actors want to work with you on, then you know what? You're going to be welcomed into that family. And in small degrees, you slowly are, and you become an indie film. You become a studio filmmaker by de facto. Now, so that's where the cynicism ends and the dreaming and hopefulness starts for me, not from a strike. I don't have a lot of great faith in what this strike will do for us. Is it'll give us a little window of opportunity where we're able to work with actors we might not have worked with before, because those actors will be available. But by the way, most of them are so rich they can take a year off and it won't even affect them.
Yeah, they just live off residuals and that top tier. I mean,
exactly. They've got money that their grandchildren don't have to work. But that's me, and I'm trying not to be cynical because I truly aren't. I am not. I'm a very optimistic. I think you have to be to continue directing indie films.
But I think people need to realize that you're making terrific films on the catering budget for Oppenheimer. I mean,
I wish I'm on the coffee truck budget.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. Oppenheimer's a fabulous movie by all accounts. And
sure.
I love his pictures. I thought Dunkirk was just unbelievably good.
Dunkirk blew me away.
No studios making pictures like that because they can't. You're only going to get an idiosyncratic director at the top of his game who's able to convince people, like a PT or Quentin Tarantino, who's going to be able to convince people. And even then, it's difficult for them, or Scorsese, to put the money into those kind of projects. And we should watch them. We should treasure them. We should go out and see them. So I'm certainly not antagonistic of it, but it is something that I think film viewers, cineasts, fans of film should know. Back in the old days, you'd walk into a video store, you'd have the cinema, the studio release, and the next aisle over, it was the B movies. And quite often you'd go and you go, you know what, I just don't want the popcorn movie tonight, the one that's been homogenized around a table of guys deciding how they can get to the biggest audience possible. I want the film by the auteur. I want the film by the B-movie director who's losing his mind. I want to see that. I want to see what his take is on movie making. And sometimes you'd be disappointed, but oftentimes you'd find a far better film there.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. The same way you plan each detail for those moments, start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Protecting your family is the best plan you can make.
Jesse V. Johnson, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. You take care.
Take care. All the very best.
You're the head of the missing persons unit. You became the head of that unit to find one person. Our son. It's Keith. He's alive, Nick. No matter where you go, I'll find you. No matter where you go, I'll find you. If we don't explore this, we're throwing away our best chance.
Been down this road before. I know where it ends. For 6 years, I've gone to bed with heartbreak.